Right. Getting back. Getting back here to the truth, the love, and the light that is Jesus Christ. Yes. There's things, but he really was a cool guy, and we are going to learn about that here today. Put the hair down so you don't see my straggly hair up moment, but here we go. Let's go ahead and start off with a quote before we talk about Jesus being raised from the dead and what that was like for everybody. Quite a moment. This is the quote for this session. Let beam upon my inward view those eyes of deep, soft, lucent hue, eyes too expressive to be blue, too lovely to be gray. This was from Faded Leaves, number 4, On the Rhine. It does not show an author, but apparently is from this book here. Let beam upon my inward view those eyes of deep, soft, lucent hue, eyes too expressive to be blue, too lovely to be gray. So, question begs, were Jesus' eyes blue? Maybe not. Maybe not with this. Too expressive to be blue and too lovely to be gray. So let's go ahead and discuss John chapter 20 verses 1 through 21, line 25. I literally feel like we've read this already, but I don't think we have. Maybe we've read parts of it before when talking about... Oh my goodness. Uh-oh. Somebody's messing with the outlet back here. Oh. Whoa. Goodness gracious. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Anyways, yes, let's go ahead and get into it. Chapter 20 through 21 through 25. Verse 25. John. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight to the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there. Why can't I say that word? He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the strips of linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from the scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw 2 angels in white seated there where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned around toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them," let me add that word there, "and tell them that I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Oh my goodness. This is why, honestly, you guys, sorry to cut, but this is why the cats are not allowed in the room. They get a little too crazy. But I'm just feeling a little bit lonesome, so they're joining me in here. Crazies. Okay, anyways. Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news. "I have seen the Lord," And she told them that he had said these things to her. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for the fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he had said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." Un momento, there we go. And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." Un momento here. Now, Thomas, also known as Didymus, was one of the 12. Also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where their nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. The doors were locked. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not yet seen and yet have believed, or have not seen and yet believed." Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Alright, so we're going to go on to chapter 21. Just 25 lines in this, but I guess before we'll just take a little break for a second and talk about it momentarily. So everybody, I think the general consensus of this coming, right, was in shock. It's just surprising that the disciples did not really grasp what Jesus has been saying the whole time, saying like, I will return. They assumed that he was talking about much later. They didn't even really know that he was going to be put to death. They weren't really fully absorbing everything because they were so wrapped up in the energy and the intensity of the moments with him and just everything that was going on. So when they saw him for the first time, they were a little bit in shock. Mary Magdalene was just, not prepared for this moment, not really expecting that it would be so soon. And he kind of also faded in and out, like as it mentions here. He approached them, a few days after he approached Mary, and then he left for like a week or two and then came back to them all together. So he wasn't like completely present with them all the time, and we'll learn how he's kind of been like floating in and out, checking on more places than just one. Like he was, of course, checking in with his disciples, but he was doing other things as well, performing lots of other additional signs that are not listed here. So we hear about this. Everybody's in shock. Thomas is being Thomas and being a person who is doubting. Doubting is the only word I can think of, but just being skeptical. That's the word I was looking for. Being skeptical, but once he sees him, he's like, oh my goodness, right? Jesus, again, doesn't really hold that. He does not hold that against him, but he's just really, really enamored and supportive of those who have not even seen him and know what's going on and just already are on that page of like, yes, this is happening. But yes, he is going to ascend, and we'll talk about that next. But first, let's talk about one more excerpt from the same book, but the next chapter here, chapter 21. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, and Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I am going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. When they said, "We'll go with you." And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, But that night they caught nothing. But the disciples did not realize that it was... Oh, gosh. Why is my eyes jumping? These little guys are driving me nuts right now. Early in the morning. Okay, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net onto the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to hold the net because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed into the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from the shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire burning of coals there with the fish on it, and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, but even with so many that the net was not, then that was not torn. The net was not torn. That's what I'm going to say. Okay. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. Now this was the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him a third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you to where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This is the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, "Lord, who is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he asked, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus answered, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is it to you? You must follow me." Because of this, the rumor spread among the believers that the disciple would not die. But Jesus did not say that he would not die. He only said, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you?" This is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down. We know that his testimony is true. Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have enough room for the books that would be written. The ends, ladies and gentlemen. The end. We have one more topic, but I'm actually not going to get to it tonight. I'm going to either kick the kitties out and get some rest, or kick them out and go into the living room with them. I just don't like them climbing all over the bed, if I'm being quite honest. Nothing against the kittens, they're just having a good time, but I need to relax at this moment. But anyways, to get back to this little synopsis here, I love the story of the fish, these fish that they caught. I actually have a personal testimony in regards to this, which I believe I've discussed before, so I'm not going to go over it again this evening. Just a point that I want to point out where Jesus keeps asking Simon if he loves him, and Jesus is saying, "Okay, well, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, do all of these things." it's one thing to say, yes, I believe, and yes, I love Jesus, right? I love Jesus. But it's another to actually show it and to demonstrate it and to prove with actions how much that love really means to you. So Jesus is saying, that's great that you love me, so feed my lambs, feed my sheep. Take care of those around you. Therefore, leaves less work for God and Jesus. To pick up your own staff and definitely tend to your sheep. Tend to the matters at hand. That's a very, very important thing to do, to really emphasize your love and your care and your commitment to the Lord is really, yes, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, look after others. Look after others, put others before you, and you'll see what kind of reward awaits you. Sometimes it hurts, and sometimes you want to nurture yourself first, which is often fine, but at what rate? Goodness, Jesus is already doing the nurturing. God is already doing the nurturing if you're building that relationship, so you will have more to give to others in that sense. There's another point here that's just a little bit confusing. He's asking, he's talking to Peter, right? And he's trying to, have a serious conversation with Peter. And he's asking, oh, what about him? Like he's eavesdropping or whatever, right? The other disciple. And then Jesus is basically telling him when he's saying this, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? He's saying, how much do you care about another person's reward, or how much do you care about another person's outcome? When in this moment I'm focused on you and developing you and that sort of thing. Like, don't worry about competition, essentially, is what he's saying with this. Don't worry about competition. Don't worry about comparing yourself to others, because what is that really doing for you? That's why it compounds off of the other thing we were talking about when he wants us to aid others and he wants us to help others. That is our role. It's not to compete with one another. Oh my goodness. It's not to compete with one another. It's not to battle with each other and try to get something better than the other. This is, we're working together here and we're, helping each other get where we need to go. But when it's about you, it is about you, to focus on yourself. Anyways, I'm rambling because I'm feeling all sorts of things right now. The cats are wild. I feel wild. We're going to try to get into the stuff tomorrow in a more calm setting, God willing. Things have just been crazy. This whole week has been crazy. Yeah, I digress. I really don't want to talk negatively because I've been doing that a lot lately, just within myself, just feeling very blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it's been a blah, blah, blah week. It's been raining, cloudy over here. It's been kind of blah, 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 for me at least. I don't speak for everyone, but that's just what I was feeling. So I'm going to say goodnight, y'all. I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you for listening to me ramble on about Jesus being raised from the dead, but it is a very defining moment in the story. We're going to talk about the Ascension next and how it's different than a lot of us may picture the story of Ascension. It's very anticlimactic, if I could put it like that, because it is. But yes, I will talk about that next tomorrow. Goodbye. Good night.